Good morning and
Thank you. Welcome to council members, guests, members of the public watching via the live stream, and all councillors that are here today with us who have travelled. Thank you for that. We'll declare the meeting open at 1:02 p.m. Kia ora te marino, kia whakapa, whanamu te moana, ai hurahei, ngā tātou, ai te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou e, tātou katoa, hui e, takia. Moving on to apologies, we have an apology from Kai Whakahiri Tim High. And I move for second place so we can resolve that the apology be received and accepted. Councillor Burnham, Councillor Maitland, thank you very much. All in favour? Eric, thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to declarations of interest, we have had an update. It's always there to be circulated and viewed of you. And thank you, Councillor Lunns, for 2 updates. They are now noted on the register, which revolve around Councillor Lunns and her partner with their new positions and purchases. So that is on the interest register. And thank you for making sure that was updated very properly.
Sorry, Mayor Lash, Councillor Walker has some apologies.
Oh, you're not zooming? I believe you were zooming.
You couldn't get a Wi-Fi signal.
You couldn't?
He's like in the mountains.
So sorry, yes.
Okay, all right. So we've acknowledged the declaration of interest, so we can just revert back to the apologies for a second. We will also include Councillor Walker along with Kai Whakahiri Network. And the movement, sorry, too high. Woo! Sorry, I'm just so excited to be back at the table. It's running away with me. So if we can maintain the mover sector, I'm happy to agree to the extension of the apologies. Thank you, and if everybody's still in favour of receiving those. Thank you very much. So we just got that addition. Thank you very much. Urgent items are not on the agenda. We do have an addition. We have an application for rates remission received from Norwest Estate. The resolution is that council receive and accept the addition of the urgent item to today's council meeting. The application for rates remission will be reviewed at the end of the staff reports. Can I move the second, please, that we accept that as a late?
Sorry, I just needed to clear up conflict with that one. I'll be sitting there for that one, but that need to lose.
Okay.
That's really right.
Thank you. We will note that before we go into that. Can I move the second, please? We accept that as a late agenda item or not? Councillor Lunns? Councillor, sorry. Martin? All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for that. Public forum, we have nobody.
Oh, no, it's really question. Just a question on the agenda.
On the late agenda item that's been added?
No, on the in committee agenda. I'm just querying why the council notice of motion regarding the future of the eyesight is in committee and not an open meeting.
That's where it was requested for the notice of motion that it placed.
Yes, that's probably my unity on behalf of Councillor Donald. Because again, respect, but I don't see there's a good reason why there's no talk. There's no mention about any individual positions. I don't see why it should be an open meeting.
Right, Chief Executive is fine for it to be in the public section. So we will need to note then that it gets moved from the confidential section, and we will place that at the end after the resolution report. Is everybody agree with that? Awesome, thank you. Right, as said before, nobody's available for the public forum, so we'll move on to the minutes of meetings. Firstly, the council meeting minutes of 4th June 2026, followed by the Risk and Assurance Committee and all meeting minutes from the 27th March 2026. The resolution is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 4th of June 2026 be confirmed as true and correct record of the meeting. Can I move from the sector, please? Councillor Villiers, Councillor Maitland, thank you. All in favour? Carried, and I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed council meeting minutes. The second minutes was the Risk and Assurance Committee minutes to be received. Again, the resolution is that the minutes of the inaugural Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on 26th March 2026 be received. And again, can I have a move and receipt, please, councillor Martin, thank you very much. Can I have a second on that, please? Thank you, councillor Maitland. All in favour? Carried, thank you, everybody, for that. Right, so moving on to the business end, we move on to the action list and ask the chief executive to speak to that, please.
Thank you. So the action list item number 2, which is around the credit to the Museum Trust Board formation. Just to let folk know, I will know those conversations in terms of the overall picture of the museum are going to be made up to fit into the LTP conversations. So any wider detail we thought would be more useful to frame into the LTP conversation. So that makes more sense then, because that's when decisions are made regarding how we're going to progress. So just so folk knows, I propose that we leave it as open in the items, but we can cover it back when we do the LTP once it's been part of the papers. For item number 5, Lake Canary, the Lake Canary report has gone through to the regional council. We're waiting for the feedback on that, and then we'll be able to book the meetings with the local community as we've agreed. We'll continue to track that. I haven't got a time frame. I don't know what the report back from regional is, but as soon as we get it, we will act with some priority to get that meeting with the members as said. Item number 9, Freedom Camping. There was a request that we set a date for a report back to council. We will be coming back in the July meeting with options for council to consider around the Freedom Camping and the subsequent workshop that we had in May. Item number 11, which is the Kamara Endowment Fund. We were instructed to look at the current structure of the Kamara Endowment Fund and look at ways that it might be modernised. We've agreed that that will occur, but we didn't put a time frame. I'm proposing the time frame will be August. We do have a very full work program between June and July with annual report, annual plan, etc., plus the LTP kicking off. So that as soon as I can come back with a comprehensive report, that will be August. Thank you. So I'm suggesting that stays open until that's progress.
Yep, couple here, Metric.
Through worship, 2 things, Lake Canary. Can we ask in advance for the before meeting with the regional council give us a specific report on the effects of the historic septic tanks and what effect that might have on the way.
So that would be, sorry, through the chair, we can ask regional council and then provide us with that feedback report that's included as part of that, so they can consider that as part of the result feedback. Happy to do so, and then feed it to the council as soon as we've got it, prior to us making the meeting as agreed.
Yes, because that was a specific concern.
Yes,
was
agreed, it was.
the aged septic tanks.
And that's where we'll get the value back. No, happy to do so.
The second one was the Kamara Endowment Fund. Although it's not a priority, will that also include legal advice, please? Because the last legal advice we had a few years back was that it was very much a straitjacket and very little room in it.
So through the chair, to be fair, it's not so much a priority. We are prioritising to get out to August. It's just that we wanted to make sure we get a thorough report back. So it is a bit complex setting down, but certainly make sure that it's always intended that we would have the refresh legal things.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it would be good to get a final resolution on that and understand the history, documentation, what's been changed, what hasn't, what's been changed to the legal law, what hasn't, what needs to be amended or anything else in between. So there's a lot of research to do on this at the time, as you can appreciate. Thank you for that. For hearing that work. Good questions to have. Report complete. So the resolution is that the updated action list from the chief executive be received. And as there's no items to be removed, it's just purely receiving the report. And I can move them to second, please. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Lunns, all in favour? Thank you, everybody, for that. Right, And next we welcome Ashley Stewart, who is the lead on the Local Government Reform Head Start program. And Ash is here to for us regarding the program and update. So Ash, welcome to the table. Nice to see you down here. And the floor is yours.
Well, kia ora koutou. Thank you very much, councillors, for including today to provide an update. While Joe was just getting the presentation up and ready to go, I thought I'd start with a bit of an introduction about myself and kind of where I've come from and what my skill set is for this project in particular. So I grew up in Bulla, as you might have heard, coming from Bulla. All my family are across the coast, Westport through to Ross. And I have built my career on regional development policy in Wellington and central government agencies. So I started in Treasury, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and then the last 3 years prior to coming down to the West Coast, I've worked across 4 ministers' offices in the Beehive in the regional development policy area. So that included setting up the $1.2 billion regional infrastructure fund. And then I was always looking for an opportunity to come back home and work for the coast. So I took a role at the Regional Council, Te Tini Ngāi Tahu Partnership Manager in Economic Development. So I have been seconded out of that role to lead this Head Start local government reform process up until August initially, with a working group with a representative of each of the district councils and one from regional council. So that's kind of where we're sitting in terms of the working group. The governance group, you will already be aware that the Mayors Chairs and iwi Forum have had an expansion of that group into deputy mayors and the deputy regional council chair. They meet fortnightly and receive updates. But this update really for this table for today is around where we're at with community discussions, where we're at in the process, what we know from DIA as of today, because things keep moving and changing, as you can appreciate when in a reform process like this is announced by the government, by 2 ministers actually. Sometimes the government department are also trying to get information from ministers as to what they want to see. So some of this information will be what you may already know, some might be new, but I'm going around each council table to give as much of an update as we possibly can at this point. As of 24th of June, all of the data in here is what we've got from the online engagement platform as well. So the key point to remember is that no final model has been agreed. And we have consistently been saying when we're out in the community, these discussions are a starting point only. This Head Start process has been pitched by the government as a voluntary process, but in saying that, they've also got quite strict parameters around what you can put into a Head Start outline proposal. And if you don't put a headline proposal in, you're into a backstop process, which at the moment we don't know exactly what that looks like. But what we do know is it will be a centrally led process, which to me implies potentially Crown Commissioners and very little local input. That could change. There's an election in November as well, so keeping those in mind. So the working group has been working really hard to help the community understand why we're doing this, what we're trying to get from these community discussions at this point in time, what we really can't answer. And there are a lot of answers we can't give because we don't have the information, and actually neither do the Department of Internal Affairs. So if we move, cool. So this is just an update of where we are now. On the 4th of June, that was the date that all 4 councils had formally resolved to enter into the Head Start outline proposal. And that was also the date we could start advertising the community discussions. If we went out before then, it would be preempting some council decisions. So you may be wondering why Grey got 3 days notice before the Grey drop-in session. This is why, and we really were working on pretty tight timeframes to even get there. We are looking at potentially adding a couple more sessions in Grey because they've seen the interest in the Hokitika drop-in, the interest in the Bulla ones this week, and feeling as though maybe another opportunity wouldn't be a bad idea. I mentioned before the governance is the Mayors Chairs and iwi Forum, but we've also got the expanded group with the deputy mayors and deputy chair of regional, and then the CE group meet weekly with me with some direction, and then a project working group, which I mentioned has 1 representative. All of the people working on this project are doing their BAU day jobs as well. We haven't got any external resource anywhere at this point in time. If we continue on local government reform project, we may need to relook at that as a region because it's a lot of work for a very small group. Other regions have got full teams on this. They've brought in the consultant reports. We're doing the best that we can with the information that we have. Mentioned before I probably didn't mention that the August deadline is 5 weeks away, not very far at all. And in that time, we have to finish the community discussions next Friday. we have to draft a draft outline proposal, bring it back to every single council table for a workshop, and then bring it back with any proposed changes to the council tables for decisions. So the council tables remain the decision makers. Me as Chair Zidiwi are providing direction and helping kind of shape what we might want to signpost as further work needing to be done to the government and what we might need from the government in any next phase of work, because that was part of the criteria that Department of Internal Affairs put out. Tell us what you want from government and make it very clear what capacity and capability you have in your region and where you might need some support going forward. In terms of independence, we've been putting out media releases and public messaging from me as the project lead, and the intention for that is that no one councillor is seen to be leading this project. It's an East Coast project for this initial phase. And again, independence is a really hard one when you've got a limited amount of people to pick from across the region, and you've got district council representatives, although the people on the working group have been chosen for their skill set, not necessarily because they represent any district council shape or form. So we're working to look at what independence looks like beyond the August timeframe as well, but that's kind of where we're sitting in terms of the working group, what the work we're doing and the community discussions. Just wanted to cover off what the Head Start process actually means and what it isn't, because there has been a little bit of confusion across the country around what was released, reading between the lines, what ministers have said, what Department of Internal Affairs have said. So what it is it's a voluntary pathway to put forward a credible outline proposal for detailed design. That is very clearly put in the guidance as a high-level outline proposal. They're not expecting us to have all the answers or a fully fledged model agreed by all councils by August. They're wanting to know who are you partnering up with, who are you working with, what is the direction of travel in terms of potentially a model that meets our criteria, and remembering their criteria is quite strict in terms of what you can put in the proposal. It's not a blank page where you can come up with any and everything. It has to result in a reduction of councils in your region. The proposal is due on the 9th of August, but it also needs to show a credible reform pathway. And by pathway, I mean that signal of what we're going to do next. What do we propose as a region we want to do next in further detailed design work? Is that going out to consultants and getting independent financial analysis to see if this is even financially viable? What are those things that we want to highlight in the outline proposal that's needed? In terms of what it's not, I said before, it's not a blank page, a final model, or formal consultation at all on any preferred option. Yes, we have scenarios in the discussion document. The purpose for those is that they are the scenarios that most align with the government's guidance. If we didn't put those in there and we had any and all models come up, we would probably be pushed into backstop by presenting something that doesn't meet the criteria to go into the government. Again, council tables have the decision at the end of the day to either submit one or not. And if we decide as a region, no, then that's fine. But 2 territorial authorities can decide to submit an outline proposal, even if the third, in our case, disagrees. So you can create something that affects part of the district, and their council table might not be happy with that. But that is part of DIA's guidance. Backstop risk. I talked about the backstop, and I'll say again that the backstop, exactly what that is, no one knows right now. There has been very little information coming out from the government around what that means, other than it will be a centrally led process at the end of 2028 when regional councillors will be non-existent. So they've said that when they put out the discussion document around the Crown, the CTB model boards getting the mayors to govern regional council, the feedback on that was that most regions like that. They haven't put out any alternatives at this stage. They've said, well, we're going to stick with our 2028 date of regional councillors being gone. And if you haven't submitted an outline proposal and you're not in Head Start, you will be entering into a backstop process, which means likely the government or the central government will impose whatever structure they think will work best on the West Coast. And just reiterating the council role. The council role is decision makers, and it will remain the same throughout this whole process. So it's just a timeline of where we're kind of at. We're in the community discussion phase still, and we haven't put any pen to paper in terms of the outline proposal because we want to wait to see what comes through in that feedback, what comes through feedback at the council tables. And then in July, I'll be coming back here with the draft outline proposal for a workshop, getting your views, what you want to see, what you want to remove, and doing the same across the coast. And then we've set up some early August meetings for council tables to either agree or not to submit an outline proposal. So that 9th of August is a hard deadline. We've asked if it's not. If you don't submit something by the 9th of August, they will assume that you are entering backstop. So community discussions, again, what they are and what they are not. We've been going out getting a temperature check as a starting point for the engagement across the coast. And it's an opportunity to understand from the get-go what our communities want from reform. This is not a new conversation. Been through all of the local government commission reports that was done back between 2015 and 2019. There's a lot of information already there. Yes, it's outdated, but they did a lot of reports around communities of interests, community boards, etc., that are relevant as part of this conversation. And it's also a way to test, as I mentioned before, scenarios in the discussion document on what might work in a West Coast context. So if someone's saying they support, let's just say scenario A, a one council for the coast, they may say, well, yes, I support that, but you need to also consider service centres, local boards, local decision-making, you're missing all of these things. It's an opportunity to draw out some ideas because the sense from the public is they need something to react to. If we just went in and had a blank slate with no examples, we were never going to get much feedback. There's also that scenario C of what have we missed? What alternative scenarios do you want to put forward that would meet the government's criteria, remembering you can only submit an outline proposal if you meet their 5 criteria. And that would, if we wanted to have 3 or 4 unitaries on the West Coast, that would meet the criteria. So we do need realistic models and scenarios coming from the community as well. It's not just a blank slate. What community discussions are not, we're not calling this consultation at all because it's not. Really, it's pre-engagement. It's not even engagement. It's pre-engagement before we get to a phase we've got an evidence base to actually go out to the community and test the ideas, the financial analysis, the pre-work that's been done maybe by the local government commission or other. And we haven't done any financial or rating impacts at all. And we don't need to in this first phase. And the government's come out and said that you don't have to have detailed financial analysis. But what we would like to see is if you haven't done that, signal that in your outline proposal that you want an evidence base going forward before we progress with this. Because we could do the financial analysis and spend money on a financial analysis now, and it's nothing what the government wanted to see, and then we've just wasted a whole bunch of time and money of people's BAU day. Like Joe's got a million things to do. You wanted to be doing work for the Westland District Council. We need to be making sure that we're using the working group's time efficiently over this first phase work. And what the community discussions are not, they're not the end of the conversation. We've been saying at every drop-in session and everyone we've been talking to at the start. And the best way to put your feedback in, it's great coming along to the drop-in sessions, but please submit on the online form. So we've been repeating that throughout the coast. So as of, what's the date today? What was that yesterday, 24th of June? We've had 69 pieces of feedback through the online survey. That's an overview of where they've come from. One thing to note that the drop-in sessions have had, some of them have really good turnouts and some haven't. And what I'll say about Karamea on Monday, which is one of the ones we had, the people that came, even though there were 6 people there, all 6 people represented a community group, or they were involved in lots of different groups around the area. So what we're expecting is they have come to represent a bunch of people to take back the answers or the feedback or the ideas, and they have said, well, they said they would like to see their whole group put in submissions. So we'll see if that does come through. Same thing with Bulla last night. That was a really good turnout. I lost count at 40 people and really engaged questions. And a lot of kind of constructive feedback around the process of engagement and what they'd like to see going forward. I think that's also a useful part of face-to-face engagement, is actually hearing, well, if we're going to come back beyond August, if we get through this head start, if we even submit a proposal, what do you see being of value in this next phase of work? Some of the things that we're hearing from, this is also from the 69 submissions, noting it's a very small number. We're hoping to have quite a few more. But the scenario A of amalgamation has been receiving a lot of support. But a lot of if you read the entire submission, they're saying, but. There's a lot of other ideas they're wanting us to explore as part of that scenario A. Local representation must be protected has come through a lot, and a lot of questions around, well, Auckland's got local boards, what does that mean for the West Coast? What is a community board? People actually want to know the basics before they have an opinion on something, and that makes a lot of sense. So maybe our next phase is looking at how do we educate our communities on what the difference is between some of these structures and models and governance representation. Rates affordability has come up almost every second question last night was around rates, but it wasn't just rates affordability. It was also the affordability of a reform process on top of local water done well, on top of the One Plan, on top of a whole bunch of other things. People were just really concerned that we were entering into a process where we don't know what the costs are, and that is true. We do not know what the costs are. We haven't done any financial analysis. And they're wanting us to ask the government, well, if you're asking us to go on a reform journey, where's the government in this? Where's the financial support? Infrastructure and resilience has come up quite a lot around flood, transport and climate adaptation. In Westport last night, we heard a lot about the Westport flood scheme and concerns around the costs, etc. You'll always get people bringing up specific projects or their own councils sometimes they don't understand the difference between regional council functions and district council functions, who's leading what projects. It's confusing for people. So again, I think one of the messages I'm hearing very clearly is helping the community understand how this impacts their day-to-day lives and not just rates, but their service delivery and what they can expect from any new structure will be really important going forward. And again, early things, we've got another week and a half until we receive the rest of the submissions, and it's the first kind of round of feedback. In the report that every council table will be receiving in the week of the 10th of July, once it closes, the working group are also going to put the feeling of each of the drop-in sessions. What were the questions that were asked? Because we don't know for sure that every single person that come in person will submit online. Ideally they do, but if they don't, it's also important to capture what were the themes of the night in any area that we go into. In terms of district themes, I've kind of already covered those off, but Buller in particularly really concerned about the Westport flood scheme and affordability of reform in general, not just the rates. So they have also brought up the role of Development West Coast. That's something that come up that has kind of been asked of us, is where did Development West Coast sit in this process going forward, and that'll be a conversation that we continue with. Gray at the drop in there and even in some of the submissions is around the impact on staff of this process and project in general. It's very unsettling for people to not know what the future holds, and going out and saying reform is absolutely happening and reform is happening in the next 3 months is inaccurate, isn't it? Because that is not the case at all. We've got an election. We don't really know where this is going to go beyond August, other than there will be a cabinet meeting. They will agree who progresses and who goes into backstop. And that's the extent of what we know at this point. And in terms of Westland, the Hokitika drop-in, we've got 2 more drop-ins next week, but the Hokitika drop-in was really good. Great turnout there. Lots of concern around kind of council staffing numbers overhead and how we can reduce duplication across the coast. Discussion there about community boards, that question I was talking about before about community boards versus local boards. West Coast are not familiar with local boards. The only region area familiar with local boards is Auckland, because that's new. But what DIA have said to us is, yeah, Auckland have got their local boards, but what if you want local boards on the West Coast, what does that look like on the West Coast? You don't have to copy and paste what's already working in another region. You could be creative and come up with your own ideas. So I think the reason community boards are coming through in the feedback is that we haven't actually explained at this point the difference between the power of a local board and the power of a community board. So again, there's probably a lot of work to be done in the next phase around education there. In terms of what this means for our outline proposal to come back to council tables, we're going to have to use the government criteria as the core of the structure there, and how we meet that. And at this point in time, unless the feedback changes to supporting a different scenario, or there's a whole heap of scenario C alternative models suggested, we will be framing scenario A as the most clearly aligned with the government's criteria. That's not saying that the whole of the West Coast wants a one unitary council for the coast, saying that at this point in time, the feedback is suggesting this, council tables are suggesting this, and scenario A is aligning with the government's criteria. They have said if you want more than one unitary authority in your region, you have to be large and complex. Now, if we want to argue that, fine. We could choose to argue that, but the sense that we're getting from our DIA representative is you would have to make a very strong case to government as to why you are complex and large and warrant more than one unitary authority. Further work being done that will need to be done beyond August. If we go into the Head Start process, part of the outline proposal will need to, like I said, signpost every piece of work or work stream or evidence base that we don't have, and be really honest with government of what capability and capacity we have to do that work on the West Coast, by the West Coast, and what support we need from central government or the new DIAs moving into their own amalgamated department on the 1st of July, MCERT, the Ministry of Cities, Regions and Environment and Transport. So they're going through their own little structure thing here at the moment. They don't even know what that looks like. I'm sure they have capacity and resource to help us, but we do need to be looking at support outside of the West Coast. Otherwise, the working group, we're going to have a conversation around BAU roles and how we get a team around this, because we just don't have the capacity to do all of this work by March 2027. So the government's timeline for detailed design, if you get into Head Start, you've got until March 2027 to have detailed design, and then you go out for community consultation. That's kind of what they're signaling at this point in time. But again, there's an election, and again, we have to wait to see what that looks like. So what can this council table expect next in terms of the next few weeks specifically? Mentioned before, I'll be coming back, I think it's the 24th of July, I've just locked in for a workshop here, where you'll have a draft of the outline proposal, which will be based on DIA criteria, community feedback, what I've heard from council tables, and anything else that we've got from previous reports the Local Government Commission have done or DIA have provided. That workshop will then go away and make any suggested changes with the goal of having 3 councils on the coast all agreeing to submit an outline proposal by the 9th of August. Regional council can't submit a proposal, but in the guidance, you can put in your outline proposal that regional council have supported the process and you have an understanding of regional functions and et cetera, et cetera. So there is a role for regional council in this. In terms of submission, no, they will not have their logo or sign off, council table sign off. That will just be the three authorities. Cool. So I'm happy to answer any questions. It doesn't necessarily be about what was in the presentation, just in general about Head Start. Keeping in mind that I might not be able to answer your questions because I might not be the right person to answer them. I might have to take the questions to the Department of Internal Affairs and ask, but I will try my best. So go for it.
Thank you, Ash, for that. It's a good presentation, and I hope at least it's for the awareness or understanding for everybody. Just to follow up on the engagement and or submissions, I think what's critical for us now, knowing the numbers of returns that we've had from Westland, is that every bit of advocacy we do should be encouraging people to make a submission. Don't offload to you because you can't make it on their behalf. They need to put their pen to paper or their fingers to the computer and actually do a submission themselves, not through you. It's vital that we get their opinion directly.
For your worship, for those people, so one of the things that came through quite clearly at the drop-in centre was some people saying they don't have the access to the computers. Some of them have already provided me with paper copies. So there are paper copies with envelopes at downstairs in reception and also at the library, and the envelopes are there. It comes through to myself and I upload them to the system. So for those people who do not have access to computers, there is another way, and if you like, let me know if there's any residents that or anyone who does need support, and I'm happy to go out and sit with them and get their feedback.
So just on following that up, then question before. So when you go into South Westland and you'll be presumably taking some paper with you, so you'll be wanting them to fill it out at the time, because if they put it in the post, it won't get back in time, and then what it means to scan and send it. How are we going to ensure we don't miss on those opportunities?
So what I am going to be doing is speaking to a local business in both areas to ask them if somebody did, if they could drop them off there, if they could scan them through to me. So that has also been covered.
It's extra. It's just good that the council is all aware of that here at the table. So I'll start and work my way around doing that trick.
Through the chair. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, great presentation. I think it's really really loose and spelled it out really well. I think, just to say, I think we're really fortunate on Taipei we have actually run this because we've got a head start on the head start, basically. Other regions are not. And I know that some other regions are well behind where we're at. And I think that's a big reason why we're ahead of the game. So kudos, meetings this far. Just a question around the drop-in sessions. The one in Greymouth wasn't well attended. It was the first one. I don't think there's much publicity about it beforehand. Is there an opportunity to repeat and go back?
Yes, yeah, we're looking at dates to
Great.
do that, and
Yep.
whether it's we go to businesses, Gray are coming up with ideas of how they might get more engagement.
Great. 'Cause I
They
think-
had a lot
I
of
think-
engagement on their Facebook post, though. A lot of engagement, so that was positive to see, but it was after the drop-in
Ah.
session. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie, you had things.
Thank you, through the chair. We asked at the last meeting to be kept more up to date with what's going on, and Barb thankfully sent us through the media release before it went out. I made some governance points which didn't seem to land before that media release went out. But I don't want to dwell on that because it's happened. But to Ashley, the headline in that media release was 73% supporting Unitary Council. At the beginning of your report, you said that there's no predetermined outcome. So that media release sometime, in my view, may jeopardize interaction with this process because people may assume that an ultimate decision has already been made through that. How are we going to change that narrative to get more engagement?
So the media releases and the drop-in session kind of conversations that we've been having, we've been very clear in the body of the media release, as well as the drop-in sessions, that the scenarios have been designed because they align with the outline proposal guidance. Now, if the West Coast choose not to go into the outline proposal and come up with something else, we would go out and we wouldn't have predetermined outcomes, and we definitely don't. It's more that if we don't have the ability to come up with something that doesn't align with the DIA guidance for this Head Start process.
No, that's not what I'm meaning. Is that the headlines of that media release
Yep.
stated that 73% support a unitary authority. And that goes against no formal model being agreed. Do you see the
I see
messaging
what
is
you're
wrong?
saying. Yes, I see what you're saying. Okay, so your
And there's
preference
still
would be,
time to fix it. We've got 6 or 7
Yes,
days.
yep.
So what are we going to do to get more engagement?
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is your preference that we talk about the scenarios, or we just don't talk about scenarios at all in media releases? Because people are putting their views on online submission around scenarios, and scenario A is one unitary council, but is it more appropriate to say, okay, 73% support scenario A in the discussion document, or just not put percentages at all? Is that your preference?
Not put percentages.
Okay.
The numbers are so thin
Yeah.
that there's no validation to the actual use
Yeah.
of percentages.
Okay. We'll take, yeah.
Because
Fair enough,
people
we'll
think
take
it's a good thing, or 73%, so they wouldn't read it because the rest of the coast is submitted, but that's
Yeah.
73% of the number of submissions.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just.
Yes, I'll
really-
correct you to.
Really quickly on that, I mean, it's a little bit unfair though, I mean, because it's very clear, and very clear in the press release, this is just as Ashley calls a temperature check. It's nothing more than that, it doesn't indicate anything in terms of, saying there's an overwhelming support for one council at this stage of the process. All it's saying is that from submissions and feedbacks we've got thus far from the drop-in sessions and the submission, this is where it's leading. We have a duty to be upfront with the public about where things are at, and as that changes, just keep updating it. But I think it would be disingenuous to pretend that there isn't a figure and just keep everyone in the dark until we get to the end. I think
Through the chair, I see the point. What I will also say is that we've been trying to get as much engagement as possible, and sometimes these headlines and what we're trying to do is actually spark interest, spark people to go on the online submission and submit themselves as well. It's not that we're trying to be misleading, it's that we have 69 out of 32,000 people that have submitted. We want more than that. So if you don't like the headline, or you don't like that it's leading towards that scenario, please go on and put your submission and your feedback. It's not intended to say we're absolutely going for a unitary council at all. I think what you're saying, we'll take your feedback on board, but we also are trying to get as much engagement as possible in this early stage, because otherwise we'll have nothing credible to go to the government with. We'll say, oh, we actually went out, we got next to no one saying anything. And then we'll be pushed into the backstop process and that will do it for us.
That's what I need.
Through your worship, what's the cut-off date for the engagement?
Monday, 6th of July.
Right. I was talking with the group at Hill Shape Dicker on Tuesday night, and encouraging them to get involved. But I just noticed that our website has no direct link to the Have You Say, whereas if you go on Buller and West and Grey, it's there. Click. It's so difficult to search. I've searched right through the Westland website. I think that's a definite priority.
Right, thank you. We'll get that sorted.
And just as an FYI too, is that I know that Joe's been working on all the community groups that we've got in Westland. And it's gone out to them to then distribute through their communities so that we've got as widespread as we can, same with the schools, sports groups, etc. So give them the schools and sports groups, okay. But we've done it through all the community contacts, community associations and everything else, and asked them to distribute too. So we're trying to capture.
So there's also.
Yeah, I see the link through Have You Say Dicker and spread the word.
Yes.
Because I couldn't find it on our website.
Like through your worship, that was also when I sent it out to all councillors within Teams to say, please feel free to share.
Further to that information, I've received it 3 times in my inbox from different community groups, so that's
Thank you. That's good to know. It is good to know. Thank you. We have questions for Ash. Yes. Councillor Manning.
Actually, thanks for the presentation. I think it's very clear. Most of the submissions, they pretty much just whether they want to unit through council or not, or do they specify criteria like what representation they want from their district? Because looking at the 3 councils, and it's going to be population based, it's going to be area based, that they issues.
Yeah, that's a very, very different, and it depends on how engaged someone wants. Some people have submitted us 26-page governance structures and things like that, and other people have said, I want you to present a local voice model to us in the next phase of work. So it's that sort of level of detail will be that beyond all this piece of work, but in terms of what we're receiving feedback, it's all over the place at the moment. A lot of the answers in the online submission are kind of tick boxes of what are you concerned about, and we're getting tick boxes of affordability, tick boxes of infrastructure. So we know people want us to consider those in the next phase of work. Where they can put 500 characters into a box, maybe that's not enough, but that was on purpose for this early phase, because we're not asking for governance models or structures, service centres at this point. We're asking, what do you care about? What don't you like about your current local government system, and what would you like us to consider in terms of an evidence base for detailed design?
Through your worship, one more question, Ash. Do you have any idea of the climate in Parliament, or if there is a change of government, that this will continue?
Yes.
With the minor parties?
Minor parties. So what we do know is no party that isn't in government has come out publicly and said they will stop the reform process. They will not be reversing it. If anything, they've said, reform conversations may well continue. Whether they do it on the same time frame or not will be a different question. So I think maybe the message to take from that is, we haven't heard that this exact process will stop. We've heard from the Labour leader that they're interested in seeing which regions submit an outline proposal, but that's all he said.
Yes, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question about the workshops that are coming up. Are they going to be siloed to each individual council, or are you going to get all 3 councils together so all the councillors can mingle, share ideas? Because this potentially could be the last time that there's 3 separate councils.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, yeah.
Well, potentially.
Well, but this process is going to go on for a few, you'll have all your council meetings. So the answer to your question is, the decision for this first initial Head Start proposal was we're going to go to individual councils. But when we have an evidence, but if councils agree to put an outline proposal of signal all this work we need to do, once we've got an evidence base and we can actually tell you and answer the questions you're asking about a specific model, absolutely we'll bring all councils together. And that would include the regional council, and potentially Development West Coast, if the conversation goes down that route where enough of the community are wanting us to consider Development West Coast in this. But for this first phase, only individual councils. But that's not stopping you from going and talking to your fellow councillors across the coast in the meantime, or if you would prefer for me to set up some, I don't know, some sort of group that you can all put your comments in about the draft, that would work too. But in the limited time we've got, we're just trying to achieve a high level outline proposal that we can get the 3 council tables to feel comfortable submitting without over promising what we can deliver.
I think with where we're at the moment too, is we want to eliminate confusion or misinterpretation or anything else, or being charged with the intent of, say, potentially influencing somebody. We've got to be really cautious on that. We're certainly talking about workshops collectively when we get to the next stage, because that interaction is going to be vital. At this stage, we're going to be very careful on how we manage that interaction.
Yeah, correct. And the regional council will also be receiving a workshop, even though they don't have submission rights, more for you to go through what's in it. And regional council could say, put a statement in, we don't support this section or whatever, but I don't foresee that happening. It's in the interest of collaboration and trying to work as collaboratively as possible, because hopefully everyone wants what's best for the West Coast, and that will include working collaboratively going forward as well as just this initial phase.
Has anybody got anything further to add? Everybody's comfortable with where the information you've been given today, where we've landed, and the process that's needed to go through.
If I could just add, if there are any preferences, ideas, or how you'd like your workshop to run, or what you would like to see at that workshop, anything like that, pass it through to Joe, and we will work on making it work for your council table. We haven't thought about how we're going to present. I don't know if the best way to do it is, it's really not handing you a document and saying, here, have at it, give your views. Really what I want to do is help you understand why that's in there, and see if there are any allergic reactions to how much detail we're putting in this early phase. Because what we've been told from the Department of Internal Affairs is if you go into the the Head Start process and you get the tick of approval to move forward, at this point in time, there's no kind of built-in off-ramps. So when you're in, you're in. So we want to make sure that what we do submit is really honest with what we can and can't achieve in this next phase of work. So that's the goal for the next few weeks, is to not only finish the drop-in sessions, but understand what are the pieces of work and evidence base that the West Coast will need to confidently go into the next phase out to the community and say, here's how this is starting to shape up. We also don't know what the government's going to come back and say. They may say, okay, West Coast, we will accept you into our outline if. We don't know that either. So there's a lot of unknowns as to what happens between August and September, before they have their cabinet meeting. And then they go on their political, politics in the next few months. So it'll go silent. So what can we do in that space of time as well?
That's amazing.
Thank you, to your worship. Well, would it be possible to have something like information, like a little information desk at a supermarket or in the street? Like, it may not work in the street because it's probably a limited tourist common thing, but I think the communication thing, it's probably the hardest thing any council could do in these sort of issues. And sometimes with convenience, it's best to catch people when they're on the spot. Might not work, it's just an idea I had, where you get a good traffic flow and maybe get some more consultation.
Yeah, one thing I have noticed across the coast so far is some people are not wanting, I've encouraged them to submit, but they're wanting to see what the model is first before they have the input. They're saying, well, you go and if you want to get the government on board, get the government on board, but I want to see the evidence, I want to see the financials, I want to see what the governance structure is before I can react to how this is going to impact my life on the West Coast. So we have heard that a reasonable amount, and I don't necessarily, in my personal view, think it's a bad thing what we're doing now as a temperature check, because we have to know what people value to be able to work out what the phase is beyond August. But I suspect that a few people are feeling that way, that, and also consultation engagement fatigue. There are so many things out in the community at the moment. One, people might not understand what this means. They might think it's a political announcement. It's not going to happen anyway, so I won't submit on it. Or they're just waiting to see what happens. So there've been quite a few emails coming through to my inbox, as well as kind of just talking in the communities around that as well. So that's probably something to keep in mind with the number of submitters we get. Ideally, we get a lot more, but perhaps some of the community are waiting for that next round of engagement beyond August, when we actually have some models, some financials, a comparison of a local board, community board, or whatever new thing we want to create on the West Coast. But at the moment, they're feeling a bit confused. I'm not sure if confused is the right word, but yeah.
Through the chair, I think Ashley's kind of hit the nail on the head. I think people are socially conditioned to vote for the people around the table to make a decision. You're going out there and asking them to make a decision when historically that's not what's happened. So there's quite clear evidence that a lot of people are probably waiting for us to make some kind of informal headway in one direction or another.
Then they've got to kind of be their own site, as far as, once you start forming up what things could look like and what they mean. Then people have really got something solid to get their head around and really get excited for what offer altogether. I think that's when we'll see the heightened interaction there, which is good.
However, through your worship, if there's one message I would put out there is, anyone who has got any views on this, please just go online. And you don't need to fill out the whole survey, even if you just go what your preference is and what's important to you, which would take a couple of minutes. By all means, you can write more than that. It will be taken into consideration, but it is important. The more people that have their say, the more people that fill out that feedback form, the better informed the next stage will be.
So, is there anything further for Ash, please? We'll sort of get to that and then we'll start the conversation again. But it's been great, Ash. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here today in person. Through this, it's been it's helped everybody to get an idea of where we're at and why, what the process is, and why we're going to be sticking to that process at this stage. So appreciate that. Have you got anything further you want to? No? Okay. And I'm just going around the room, let me know if there's got anything else for Ash. No?
No, I'll go to Regent.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ash.
That's okay.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Yes, well, thank you. Brilliant. Excellent. It is, really better to see, we are extremely lucky to have Ash as the lead on this project. Because, her background and her experience and knowledge in Wellington is just profound, and yeah, we are incredibly lucky to be honest with a lot of background, incredibly lucky to be honest. And it helps that she's a West Coast, but actually gets us and understands some of the commentary that's there too. She's very, very respectful of the variance between Boreal and Grange Western as well, as far as mindsets go too. So she's very, very tactful and respectful as far as managing that style of comments. Right, so we do not have to receive that presentation from Ash, so we'll move on to staff reports. And with that, and Mel, I'm sorry, I see you sitting there working through all this, and I see you're not down to 2:10, but we may be to you before then as far as being here as support of Destination Westland. Yeah. So moving on to staff reports, and we hand over to Stephen for the West Road statement of chief.
Thank you, Worship, councillors. Got 7 reports with you today. We've got 6 in a row, so you're with me for the next hour or so everyone's comfortable. So the first report is Westwood Limited Statement of Intent. It's actually just a noting paper. governance and administration of this report is that council needs to receive the report by 13th of June. That's not to adopt it, it's just it needs to be physically received by the council, but the council has it operationally, so not a governance issue. So this is just to say, I have received the report, the statement of intent from West Wales Limited, and that they will present it to you at the July council meeting. So it's literally just a note of paper to tick off a piece of administration, so you have received this, and you will get your say on it in July.
Sorry, questions, please, for Stephen? Councillor Hilliard.
Through your worship, I had this feeling, I don't think it's very good governance, I just think we're accepting something for a legislative requirement. I just wonder whether it just stands up to order that you're approving an SOI when the SOI doesn't actually exist.
It's through the chair, so we're not approving it, so we're just acknowledging that we've received it. It won't be
But
approved
have
until.
we received?
Yes, as in I have, so it's just that the council has to receive the report, as in it's a deadline by the 30th. Not that it's adopted by the council or that it is action by the council, so that will be done in the July meeting. It's just that we have physically received the.
Is there any reason why we're doing it this way? I mean, I'm sure in the past we've had SOIs to review before the 30th of June.
Through the chair, we normally have through the committee, the CCI committee, which will go through the CCI subcommittee. And then it comes in to the council to have a presentation by the chair, which will be in the CA, and an opportunity to present, and the council gets an opportunity to make comment or it adopts it. So that's been the previous experience that I've had with council meeting.
Bear in mind that legislatively we're required to adopt before the end of the financial year, which is why it's previously gone to the committee and then managed there, and then come to council at the table. So it's a bit, this is coming here as opposed to the committee. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, through the chair. Maybe it's a confusing bit of syntax. The paper says adopt, but then the CFO says accept.
Yeah, so
Which is it?
through the chair, so it is to receive, so yeah, it's an error in the report, so and the resolution is to receive the report, not to adopt the report, so apologies for the error on the report.
We, through the chair, we err on the side of that we into the legislation to say adopt, which is why the impact was drafted and said adopt. And actually, in February review, it does say we just need to accept it and then. So it was just a timing issue really for us. I agree, it's indeed it is in receipt.
So the wording would be changed.
And change the review message, we do so, so it's a trying. Change it here. We can just put that motion, we change the.
So I've only got it as received anyway.
And the options.
And the options.
Yeah, through the chair, so in the options on the report, it says adopt, but we realised that wasn't going to happen, so in Mel Ash's run sheets, the motion is that the report is received.
So through the chair, my recommendation is that we remove 7.2. Which would then say 7.1 is that report be received, and that we remove 7.2. Then the date of adoption is the 7.3, and then that will make it true. Sorry,
You want your topic notice just capturing that? Do you want to use the repeated out there?
Just
The final part is that in 7.3, council group staff to make the SOI available to the Western District Council website within 1 month of the date of adoption for a period of no less than 7 years, which will then connect to it. Thank you. Councillor,
And no less
just leave it as the rest of it.
date of adoption.
For a period of no less than 7 years.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. Your worship. So that would mean that council will be once again, so on accepting that time.
After the July action, you'll be asked to adopt, and that's really good.
maybe we've got the argument presentation from the city to. Okay, any further questions on that? No? Okay, so the resolution is that we can vote down the legal scope. We remove the word of the options to be changed to, sorry, I'm being, so it's not quite. We did. We resolved the wording of, so the resolution is that the wording. Makes sense. That we remove the wording from options recommendations. So we remove option 7.2 from the recommendation. And the council directs staff to make the SOI available on the Western District website within 1 month of the date of adoption from less than 7 years, confirming that we received the following recommendations. Is everybody happy with that capture of the recommendations? Okay. So can I move to second place so we may resolve those points? Thank you, Councillor Kingsley. Thank you, Councillor Leo. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. And next on the list is the Destination Westland Limited statement of intent. I'll give it over to you, thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Worship. Same again, can we repeat, same process, please?
Yes, same amendments. Okay. Anybody got questions on that? I'm just quite happy with where that sits. Okay, so the resolution is again that the report be received, that clause 7.2, recommendation 7.2 is removed. And that council directs staff to make the SOI available on the Western District Council website within 1 month of the date of adoption. And for no less than 7 years. I move from second place for that. Councillor Burton, thank you. Councillor Maitland, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. And thank you, Stephen, for doing those matters. Next on the report is the financial report, and again, we have two Stephen.
You Worship. So I'll take the report as read. I'd just like to note a couple of administrative items. This will be the last formal report for the next 2 months that council will receive in terms of financial performance. It's usual for the final report of the year to be skipped because the council's going through its audit procedure. I'll give you an update to risk and assurance in August, and I'll also keep council appraised if anything significant changes from the forecast numbers that have already been outlined on page, sorry, I'm just checking the page. Page 30 of the financial of the papers you had today. It's also standard council procedure for there not to be a financial report dated July, so that would be presented at the August meeting. For the reason that the first of the financial year actually has very little information in it. It's often basically based on accruals and repayments and forecasts, so it's not actually a meaningful presentation. That's not to say that council internally will be looking at it, so myself and the rest of the team will be also reviewing the finances, sticking to budgets, doing all our usual report. They just won't be official reports for the next 2 meetings. So the next financial update you receive will be the for August period, which will be in the September report. So that's just an update on that. As I said, if there's anything significant changes, I'll update council if something comes out of audit. I don't think there's anything major to report. As I said, we've got a full year forecast there, which we're now expecting a surplus of 3.2 million against budget of 3.7. So we've pretty much closed back down to where we're expecting to be. Significant changes, the same items as every month. Airports moved into next year. The depreciation error, which has obviously been corrected in the annual plan, which we'll be looking at to adopt hopefully later on this afternoon. And the staffing costs are expected to be 800,000 below budget. We've actually achieved significant increases in fees and charges relating to waste transfer fees and also work done by regulation compliance. And also that the revenue is running up approximately about 500,000, which is due to council's swap investments, which are performing well at the moment against interest rates. So we've actually seen council operating revenue has increased and costs are actually on budget. That's all I have on that report. Is there any questions?
Questions, please. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you through the chair. Stephen, arrears are up 394,587 in a year from 966 in May to 1.36 million. What's driving that and how many ratepayers are on payment plans?
So through the chair, so is that on page 38? So is that the rates, the rate data history? So there's nothing specific that we're noticing in terms of trends or anything. It's just a general increase on the amount of debt that's outstanding. In terms of direct debit, we're still only around 40% of ratepayers are on that. This report is obviously based as of this, but mainly have received significant income during this month. Tends to be that this final bill of the year is one of the ones that has quite a lot of late payments on it. But because people know our financial year ends, they get a bit, they know we're coming to an end of our financial year, so it's particularly high in May for that reason. June should see it fall back down. I appreciate it is running, as you say, 300,000 higher, but we're not noticing anything specific.
So my read from what you're saying is that households are struggling?
Potentially. I mean, we're not receiving any more increased requests for assistance. We make it very clear that there is a assistance program out there that we can obviously offer rate relief. But you know, that's something we're trying to communicate more. It's actually something I've asked the right officer when we do the strike this time round, that we'll actually have more documents in that pack that goes out when you get your rates notice. They'll actually say these are the options open to you. So that's one of the things we are trying to look at to see if we can make people aware that that money is available and to claim it if they're eligible.
Against that, what's your read on the further 6.5% increase? And how that'll land on these already stretched ratepayers?
Through the chair, I mean, again, it's the rate obviously is 6.5 is, as we keep saying, it's quite an anomalous number. You know, some ratepayers are seeing reductions in their bills, and equally a 6% increase for some people is not the same as a 6% for others. So there's a very broad range of increases on them. You know, so you have a low rate base and it goes up by 6% compared to an already high rating base that goes up by 6 or 6.5%. So, I mean, all I can really say is that we simply trying to obviously reduce that as much as we could. We have made savings against long-term plan, and we'll continue to monitor to see whether to get debt increases or not over certainly over the next coming months.
So, because it's good to know that it's something that we can recognise and note. I certainly can't really situation. Any further questions for Stephen? Sorry, Councillor Lee,
Yeah, through your worship. Just following on Councillor McKenzie's query on debtors, I'm wondering if it would be useful to have a aged debtors report for the rates data, just to get a feel of. I mean, we've got a total, but it would be useful to get an idea of how outstanding some of this debt is with short-term problems, or it's going to be. It will give us a trend, I guess. I mean, we've got aged debtor reports for other debtors. I'm just wondering if another line in there would be useful.
Through the chair, yes, I can see that would be helpful. It's making looking. There isn't a report system that generates that, but it is something that we can look at. There's certainly an easier number to get to, which is unfortunately there are cases where council takes non-payment through to legal action. So that's something I can pull out very quickly. So they're really where it's repeat offenders over long periods of time. The arrears as a whole, we tend to be short term. We have few persistent ratepayers, as I said, unfortunately, we have to take further action against them, but it's something I'll look into to see how easy it would be to pull that information from the system.
It is something that, you know, with historically, and the write-offs have been quite extensive over the years as well. And it's not, there's no different pattern here at the moment as far as all the other underground sector ones that are the level that's there currently. We've also got to be mindful of whether we, you know, stepping into operational as opposed to governance as well. Because we can recognise the situation. Stephen can provide the information, but it's what your intention is to do with the information up to that point. To be mindful of, and we have tried to be mindful of the cost of living crisis with our assessment regarding the rate strike, etc. And of course, when we get to next year with the long-term plan, that's when we can really start getting into some serious action. But yeah, Stephen, I know you guys have put enough time and energy into reporting and so forth too, and I know with previous, you will have it somewhere in your record where that was broken down, I think to another line or two, as far as the information that's been asked about. And it just showed costs, because when we got to the write-offs, there was always that figure and then that explanation on why it's in the process, so.
Yeah, through the chair, once we finalise the year end, then you'll be coming to council with a breakdown of the write-offs that have been processed through. Again, I can see there's no significant glitch in terms of the number hasn't increased significantly in previous years.
Very good numbers what I've seen in the past.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions, please? No? Okay, so, resolution is probably received. Can I have a move on second, please? Councillor Mackenzie, thank you very much. Councillor Gillette, all in favour? Carried, thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen, for that. And just stay where you are, because you're on again. Right through. Right, the annual plan, adoption, please, Stephen.
Hey, thank you, Your Worship. So this report actually covers the adoption of the annual plan 26-27. We also need to re-adopt our rating policy for 26-27. And we also need to re-adopt our rates remission policy for 26-27. I've also got some changes that I need to distribute to council. Just basically, I need to make amendments to the document that was circulated. So it's the annual plan. There are basically changes to page 17 and 20, which are on the financial statements. The changes to the statements are literally to the statements themselves. So this is a presentational issue that we've noticed when we've been reviewing the accounts. There's no change to any of the numbers presented to council. There's no change to rate factors. There's no change to any dollars. It's purely that there were some omissions on the tables. Which, because the tables obviously contain multiple subtotals, if one number is wrong, it basically made several of the other numbers meant they were correct as well. So it's basically a presentational change. The system generated reports unfortunately has flaw in them, which we've now corrected. We've got a process in place to make sure that they're picked up in future, that it doesn't slip through. That's changes there. You'll also note that I've re-included pages 42 and 50, which relates to fees and charges. So page 42, the fees on this page will be updated with these fees, which basically means they stay the same for dog animal control, the same as they were last year, which is something that had been agreed with my colleague, General Manager Lee Webster, for regulatory compliance, that we were holding fees flat year on year while the whole dog registration process was being reviewed. Unfortunately, one of the pages was updated with an inflated number, so that those should be reset back to what they were. And on page 50, there is a line halfway, kind of in the middle, which is under a section called reports, which basically is the monthly building consent reports of $85 was accidentally deleted from the fees and charges table. But one of the issues we've got is the annual plan is a shared document, because obviously multiple officers are working on it simultaneously, which is helpful to us because it means that we can obviously all be working in it and we don't get conflicted errors. Also, it does mean, unfortunately, that errors can happen, and with multiple people in a document, someone could lose something or have accidentally deleted something. So on one hand, it's very helpful we have that. I've now put a review process in place, which is once the document is finalised, we will lock it and I'll redistribute it to the relevant departments to get them to recheck it again. So it's something that shouldn't have happened, but we have a process in place to make sure it doesn't happen. But again, there's no material change from the statements and the fees and charges. It's just changes to one that was missed and one that had been inflated when they shouldn't have been.
Councillor Ratton.
Thank you, through your worship. Stephen, I was scrolling through the draft annual plan that's controlled on.
Yep.
And I noticed there was something that was absent there that is in this rates, on page 52. And it regards the where water sewerage service is located within 100 metres boundary of the rating unit. And that if the council considers the property to be serviceable and capable of connection, in a reduced rate of 50% will apply. Has that always been the policy of council?
Yeah, so through the chair, sorry, I wasn't coming on to the policy, but yes, it is. The wording in the previous policy didn't state the 100-metre rule. That's something that councillors always apply 100 metres. It has caused some issues with some ratepayers that obviously we haven't ever stated that within our policy. So although that's what we have applied, it's never been stated. So this is one of the amendments that I was wanting to come to on this policy is we haven't changed what we do, we're just now stating it very clearly in the policy. Before it just said located close to the boundary, it was very ambiguous. The rating department has always used the 100-metre rule, so nothing has changed, it's just stating this very clearly now.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I did notice that, Graham Buller, they have, their distances are 50 metres to water and 30 metres to sewage. My concern was that the people that are in the rural setting, if their boundary, radical unit boundary is maybe 100 metres from service supplies, but their residence is 300 metres away. So that would create 400 metres of supply where the option to use a septic tank or a water tank would be much easier rather than having a wall like this. Would that be able to be looked at?
So through the chair, that you're correct that the different councils use different rates. There's no stipulation in the Rating Act as to what that number should be. It's just clearly stated that the council needs to declare what that number is. I have to confess, I've looked into where that's come from. I've gone back 15 years and can't see it being any other different number. I suspect, the honest answer, I don't know where the 100 has come from, but it's been consistently applied. If that's something the council also wants to look at, that's something we can look at through LTP and change potentially how we distinguish, or sorry, how we define what a serviceable connection is. But again, this hasn't changed. This isn't something that is new. It's always been applied by Westland Council. The reason I've added it in is because the Act does state that it needs to be, we need to give the rationale for how we do it. So I'm trying to just be more clear to council and to ratepayers that this is the policy that we apply. If that policy needs to change, then obviously that's a influence issue for the council to look at. So.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. Through the chair and actually back to the chair or the CEO, whichever wants to answer my question, but your cover letter says that the economic and operating context has continued to evolve since the long-term plan was set, and that some past approach is no longer sustainable. This annual plan is obviously built on the long-term plan. It delivers year 2 of it. So if the assumptions underneath it have shifted that much, how confident can we be that the commitments we're carrying forward are still justified, given that debtors, as the CFO has just said, have increased by 394,000, more households struggling?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember which page. Yeah.
Page 17.
Yeah, our page is our page is. You've
So
got
through the
me.
chair, I'm happy to give that one a go.
Okay.
It's not an easy, I think what we were trying to do there was capture the fact that there was some financial assumptions that were made in terms of, I guess, of trying to be conservative with some of the approaches, particularly around the reserves and how they're going forward. And so what we've been trying to do is unpick some of those and say, are we being overly cautious in the view of the backdrop we've got now? And should we be looking at those in a more pragmatic way going forward, knowing that there are difficulties coming up, etc. So I think it was more trying to capture that than saying that we had a flawed principle base, which I don't believe we do. But I do think that sometimes there's a rigidity about decisions that have been made some time prior that actually need to be refreshed going forward. And I don't believe perhaps in recent LTPs that had been quite as driven as perhaps the way that we've approached these LTPs. So our approach has never been and will not be the next LTP as it relates to repeat. We've gone back to question everything, every assumption. Whereas I think we were trying to highlight in the end thing that there are constraints, but we're trying to address them. And we've been quite open about that in the LTP coming forward into this new LTP, that we're fully aware that the backdrop has changed more than how it probably could have been predicted. And it's timely that we actually refresh the total assumption base. But that's not to say they were flawed, it's just a time issue.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Stephen, so that issue with the water that I was concerned about,
Yep.
can that possibly be changed from the long-term plan at a later date?
So through the chair, so my colleague just pointed out to me, it'll actually fall within the remit of the Coast Waters TCO. So it will no longer be council's decision at that point.
So it could work, Chair.
Yes, yeah, but it will be under a different thing. Okay, so, but it could be changed, yes.
Councillor Mackenzie.
So probably a question for Stephen. The plan itself flags inflation assumptions may not hold. This is on page 74. And so we're adopting year two of the plan, whose own foundations you can see removed while ratepayers fall behind. At what point does the council test LTP commitments themselves rather than trimming around the edges?
So through the chair, so yeah, the annual plan was adopted on inflation, proposed to be adopted on inflation assumptions of 2.7% as a general rate. Inflation projected to be running at 4.2% by the middle of this financial year from the information that we're receiving. We've done work modelling that to see what the impact potentially would be on council in terms of costs. It's not straightforward of just applying a percentage increase to a number, because we appreciate there's multiple inflation factors. Payroll costs obviously aren't subject to inflation, they're subject to different rates changes. So the overall number would be a potential impact to council of $500,000 in the next financial year, which at the time, as when I spoke, said, you know, we may have to review the annual plan. I'm not proposing that we do. The $500,000 is something the council will be able to manage with its operational budgets. It's we have sufficient reserves and we have sufficient levers that we can pull in order to manage that if we need to. Obviously anticipating or hoping that inflation will continue to drop back down. But to answer your question in terms of inflation in the future plan, the problem we have with LTP is rate capping, which is, you know, again, it's not legislation, but the proposal is between 0 and 4% rate cap. If inflation's already expected to be running at 4.7, government hasn't actually made an indication how we're meant to deal with that. We will potentially be in a position where we'll have no choice other than to cut services just to maintain the rate cap. So, don't have an answer for that at the moment because government haven't given guidance on how we're expected to manage that.
The other thing they have to give us an indication on is exactly what it will be on, whether it's on everything business, whether it's just on new services, everything outside of new services. It's the unknown at the moment.
And through the chair as well, as I said, you know, we operate multiple inflation rates within council. I mean, the government proposal at the moment is to use CPI, which is, in my opinion, irrelevant to councils. Council actually operates its own through, apologies, I've forgotten the name of who. MGFA actually create their own estimates, which are basically, you know, the council doesn't go out and buy milk and bread and pay for its mortgage. You know, it builds roads and it buys asphalt and it, you know, runs the business of council. So there's a separate inflation question there anyway, but also then capital inflation rates are completely different to operational inflation rates. So the whole system just feels very flawed at the moment, but that's my personal opinion. So it's not a council opinion, but it's, I don't know how we're going to operate it. It's quite interesting to figure out how we're going to do it.
Yes.
So, that's been too much of a weak blanket. Before we congratulate each other about getting down to single figures and 6.5% average. Of course, we need to put that in context. This comes on the back of some very horrible rate increases in recent times. So yeah, so the 6.5 is not as great as it looks. And to be honest, we've achieved 6.5 and you know, and reduced from the initial amount that was by a bit of tinkering around the edges. I mean, it's, the library, not funding the library depreciation, fund, hours at the eyesight in the museum, which I think is very good. And the library, yes, they make savings, but it's really superficial. It hasn't, what we haven't done is we haven't addressed the big one. And I'm afraid that big one is $8.9 million. That's for democracy and staff costs. And that's the core of it. There was nothing that addresses that. And $8.9 million is an awful dent in the budget. The Grey District Council equivalent staff costs was 10 million. Now it's 8.9. And what happened to as I said before, when I come onto this council, which about 7 years ago, it was around, staff numbers were around 17. There was a lot of quibbling about when it was increased to 72. And now we're up at 90. And so what happened, I had to ask, what's happened to the report we'd asked for about those staff numbers, how we got to where we are now?
Last comment? You take.
Excuse me, can I just make a point of clarity first, if that's okay? So sorry, just so this is something I've actually raised in the report. So the 8.9 leadership number is not a payroll number. That number is the cost of all corporate services of the council. So that includes democracy, includes governance, includes chief executive, IT services, corporate services, treasury services, customer services, IT, and property and facilities. So payroll is actually 8.6. I appreciate it's not a huge different number. It's 8.6 versus 8.9. So that's not my point. But my point is that leadership number is not a payroll number. It's not a cost of staff. And just to clarify, and it's something that I don't believe is how we should do it. Those costs are on overhead of, it's basically, you couldn't run the roving department without an IT service or without customer services. So I think it's a slightly misleading way to present it. But I acknowledge payroll is 8.6 million in terms of total fee for next financial year.
Thank you. And you wish I did say it was the democracy and staff expenditure.
Do you want to start?
Through the chair, I mean, this is just a conversation that seems that we're going to go about staff and numbers.
We publish so big.
What's our neighbours? I will remind everybody here, we run a very, very lean type machine here, and I wouldn't say it's a machine, because everybody is actually doing more than one job.
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's an easy hit to go we're so big. I think if you think that Western District Council is a bloated employee staffing figure, then I suggest you look very strongly across the board at other district councils on the size we are. And I don't think that it does credit to the staff that work very hard here to deliver the service. I would say we do not have flex here. If something happens here and I have staff member that's not available, or I have staff that for whatever reason due to illness, or I have people that are moving on, we don't have a high staff turnover, to be fair, is that there's nothing to replace them. I don't have flex, and I can assure you that I have no flex, but I continue to assure you, and you continue to wish to see numbers. I think that a better conversation is to talk about core services and what people expect to be delivered in this district and how best we deliver it, and stop focusing on an FTE number, which in my mind is a very blunt way of looking at a resource, but that's entirely up to you. So I will leave that in the capable hands of as we go through the process. And as I've said to you previously, one of the papers that I believe that is absolutely critical for us going forward with LGP is to have a discussion paper on core services. So this community can determine what core services are, and then we tailor ourselves to deliver those core services. That's what we should be aiming at. And please don't underestimate we have a future of reform coming ahead of us as well. I think that we are well placed, but I would hate to think that anybody outside of this meeting, and particularly as we are obviously on live stream, believes that this council is bloated and it's staffing the FDA. And I will defend that as well. As well.
Thank you for your worship and response, and I appreciate that explanation from the chief executive. However, we are not in a position to judge that because you haven't provided us with the report.
Through the chair.
We haven't got that breakdown of
Can I
the
just
staff.
say through the chair? Can I just say through the chair? This is a governance arrangement. I run the operations. If I fail to deliver the services that are being requested through the long-term plan or being requested, then I believe that there would be a different conversation that would be had. I do not believe that we are failing to deliver services. I do not believe that there is any gap in services being delivered. Therefore, I would say that the governance arrangement should be focused on the delivery of those services rather than the operational focus, which is how those services are delivered.
With respect, through your worship, that goes back to the core of the report that was requested some months ago, which was how do we get from X to Y in terms of numbers of staff? We still don't have that explanation. And so it's not a matter of governments trying to interfere with operational, but we do as governments, we do have a right to know how do we get there. And it also comes back to the other question I asked is what happened to the staffing cap? That was still in place.
Yes,
I'm
going to interject here because we're getting into operational matters. We're briefing things that have been across a multitude of councils, and I know Henry Madrid, that you have brought this up consistently through each council, as they've said here, because I remember that when I was on council, when you first came onto council, these points being raised. We need to also be respectful that there are staff present in the room and there are staff tuned into the meeting, and we have to be respectful of that matter too. As far as the camp, that was a difference of opinion when we went back and actually viewed that, and I think it came down to a difference in interpretation of what was requested and what that response was. If you want something to be brought back to council as an agenda item,
Well,
bring it forward to me.
we did ask that, and that was that.
I'm not too sure what you would do with the information, because as the chair has just said, is that coming up to a local government reform, we've got to work as hard as we can to structure this place to make sure that we are sitting in the right position for the future amalgamation. We need to make sure our core services are as they should be. We need to make sure we understand our books and what the future looks like, because our decisions won't be based on how many staff we have here. It's going to be how we integrate all the services that we provide to ensure it is cost effective to every region that becomes one on the coast. Our direction is going to be changing and should be starting to change now, what we look at and why we're looking at it, because we're talking about the future, not the here and now. So decisions need to be starting to look on the big picture, future focused, because whether you're talking staffing, whether you're talking West Roads, whether you're talking the heliport, seaport, or whatever, we've got an awful lot of work to do in bringing these entities together as we progress through this local government reform, and that will impact, change potentially how you perceive and look at things now. But I think we've got bigger things to worry about and look at rather than trying to fry anybody regarding a cap that was talked about 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and counting downwards. But if you want that on the agenda, I think we put that on the agenda and we will have a report come forward. But at this stage, I'm going to call that conversation to a close and move to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Worship. And just going back to the governance aspect, although my colleague Paul has some valid points, and I think it's evidence in the community. Stevens basically said today that households are struggling. We've got massive amounts of arrears. Your own covering letter for the annual plan states that the economic conditions have changed. Past approach is no longer sustainable. Given all those realities, why was the tourism promotion rate, which is a discretionary targeted rate that the council controls, never brought to the annual plan workshops to ease the burden on the ratepayers and to bring that rate increase down?
It's, it's actually targeted rate to, which we talking about, the basic country rating, or we talking,
I think it's 392,000 is the, or no, it's 589,000.
Yeah, through the chair, so it has reduced significantly since the last budget, which is why we're actually seeing drops in several ratepayers is because of the change in how it's related to the change in how Wilderness Trail is funded. So the Wilderness Trail previously was obviously operated by a CCO, so it's external, so that was therefore grant money was provided to the CCO to help fund it. Since council took it back in-house, that falls under a different rate, it's paid for in a different way, so it actually falls within the general rate, so the tourism rate did actually drop between financial years. So it has gone down this year, but again, the guiding principle of the annual plan was to maintain the LTP and to not make significant changes to policy that was already in place.
I want to say through the chair, because I think it's a really valid point about we should be looking at everything. And which is why we are promoting that through the LTP, that tourism paper is absolutely looking at the model of those rates. And it's been raised with us, well, it's been raised with me through the glacial country, rate about how the model is working. And it should be about how the model works and what we're trying to deliver, what services. I think that's really important. And we're really up for that conversation, and that's why the presentation paper, which we discussed later, is intended to bring that forward so that we can look at it really closely and see is it fit for purpose, are we doing what we should be doing, but seeking that input from the people that are actually wanting to try and deliver it.
Councillor?
Sorry, that doesn't answer my question. My question was, why wasn't the discussion of the tourism promotion rate brought into the annual planning?
I think,
Is it because it's in the LTP?
as Stephen's already outlined, we weren't trying to do the major changes in the annual plan because of the long-term plan year two, but we knew that we were entering into the new long-term plan where we could actually make significant change. We can reset, and actually that's our opportunity to do so. We were constrained by the annual plan about how much we could change. Perhaps it could have come to a workshop for discussion, but actually we felt that the things that we put up were the things that actually, as we went through the process, were probably the ones we could do more opportunity to discuss. But it's certainly coming up for the long-term plan.
Okay, so just to clarify, it's a lever we could have moved on if we wanted to.
I'm not sure to what degree we put it to be a council in Kinsey. In all honesty, how much money we would have got from them and through the annual plan process. I can't give you that, I'm sorry. I can definitely tell you the long-term plan is we can, but I'm not sure about how far we would be constrained in the end.
Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Is the increasing burden of government legislation and requirements, has that impacted much on the cost of roughly what sort of percentage would that be?
Through the chair, it has been really hard to try and quantify that. We've seen it mainly within the water services. That's where we've seen a large, but to be fair, we've got the RMA reform coming through, which I know you're aware of, Councillor, which will have significant effect on our incentive, our building, and those processes, and we're going to have to adjust to make those amendments in terms of reporting, but also how we're going to enact. So we haven't quantified it in percentage, but we're acutely aware of it. And to some degree, that will absorb to within the funding we've done, and that's including how we've managed to start to do that.
Well, what I'm concerned about in that regard is, if we do go for a unitary council, we get uploaded with all those requirements from the regional council with environmental, lots of other things that really should be government departments. They shouldn't be put on.
That's something that the government is looking at. I mean, we don't know what the result, whether they're going to have one environmental body that makes things. We don't know that yet, but we're acutely aware of what would be inherited and how it would be managed.
So through the chair, I think they're very valid points, Councillor Martin, the issue, and I think we're all going to grapple with them because it's sort of in terms of the Head Start process, that's what we don't know. That is a real issue for us. And I know some of us have been in that position before, it's not comfortable. But the thing that we do need to make sure is that if we do go through to the Head Start process, and we are successful, and that's the decision that's made by councils that want to boost to that. Then the next phase, we actually start determining what a model would look like, and more importantly, what that would look like to implement, is we would really be teasing out how that's going to be done, because that's going to be a huge challenge. And whether that's, I think that's the key piece of work, is definitely in the second phase, but we're successful in the start.
Right, any further questions for Stephen, please, regarding the
So question for myself through the chair. So can I just refer council back to page 45 of the document? I just want to make sure that there's administrative, sorry, you wish it might be a different page number. It's, sorry, I think yes, it's my covering report for the annual plan adoption. So it's starting at point 2.5. I just want to draw attention to some of the changes that have been made, that any council to be aware that when we're adopting the annual plan, that these changes will then be adopted. So one was on the table on the previous page, actually on page 44. It's obviously the resolutions that council made at the hearings and the deliberations. Obviously changed some of the options that were preferred options to council, so that had minimal impact on rates. But those have now been reflected in the annual plan, so that the team has updated this. As noted, rates have increased from, we went out draft annual plan at 6, we're now at 6.5%. So we have a 0.5% increase. Part of that was built up by the changes that council made through the hearing process. I also note at item 2.5 that the Fox, Glacier and Franz Joseph Glacial Township development rates, while they were included within the policy, the actual numbers themselves were omitted from the rate table. Unfortunately, the reason being that this was something that was adopted at the last minute in the LTP. The rates were set incorrectly in the system and didn't automatically roll forward. And it was only after the production of the draft annual plan that it became apparent that those rates were missing. So again, I'm not changing anything. This is the numbers are the same numbers that were in last year, have been uplifted for inflation in the same way. So this is not something new. It's just the draft annual plan showed them at 0. So to now reinstate these, so these also contribute partly towards the overall increase, because the percentage increase is just a number based on that absolute number of dollars. So again, this is something that we did last time. We're doing it again. It's not new. It's just it was omitted from the draft annual plan. And then just to go to points 3.2, so I'd said we're asking council to re-adopt the rating policy.
So where are we?
Apology, are you on page 45 of your documents, hopefully? Item 3.1.
Just tables and 3.
You have, are you looking at the draft? You'll find council. So it's my report though, in the actual council documents that were sent out by the team.
It's before the rating
So
policy.
is this
Can we
the
do that?
situation?
Yes, it is, yes.
So it's item 3, current situation,
Yep.
and the recommendation report from Stephen, and you're referring to 3.2.
On the paper.
Yeah, on the paper, yes. So it's not in the actual draft annual plan, it's the covering report. So is everyone with me on that page? No apologies. I just wanted to flag, so item 3.2, well, sorry, 3.1 is that the final rate will be struck at 6.5%, not 6%. The reasons just mentioned. Item 3.2, appendix 1 is the rating policy. The rating policy we just have to adopt it every year. There have been no changes other than the point that Councillor Maitland made, which I've now tidied up the description on the water and put in the 100 metres. As said, it's not changed, it's just presentational change in that report. 3.3 is the rate remission policy. The reason I'm asking council to adopt this again is, you remember one of the council's decisions was to stop remitting interest that was charged, penalties that were charged on late payments. Whereas if a rate paid within 7 days, we remitted that. That policy actually deals with it, so I've had to remove that item. So that's the only change that has been made to that policy, is that line has been deleted. So it no longer states that we'll remit if you pay within 7 days. And then obviously appendix 3 is the actual annual plan itself. So I just wanted to raise that that's what we're asking council to adopt. Thank you.
So is everybody comfortable with being moved to on the resolutions?
The chair, just as this is one of the biggest things of the year, I'd just like to make a brief statement for the record. Is that okay? Okay, I'm Chris Lilly, so Suzanne. And keep up.
Did I say things differently?
So good governance isn't rubber stamping yesterday's plan because it exists. It's testing whether it still stacks up against today's reality and what ratepayers can actually afford. The mayor and the CE have conceded in writing that the economics have shifted and some past approaches aren't sustainable. And the CFO confirmed arrears are up nearly 400,000 with households falling behind. I'll support adopting the annual plan today because we have to strike the rates on time. But I want it on record that the long-term plan, which the annual plan is built on, is a starting point, not a straitjacket. Where its assumptions have failed, our duty today is ratepayers, and I'll be applying that test through the rest of today's business.
Thank you, councillor Mackenzie, and I can assure you that the long-term plan is where the rubber hits the road as far as the scrutinisation very intensive. As you'll see, when you get to that stage next year, when Stephen starts to roll some of that out ahead of us now as we put this through the rest of the year. Thank you for that. That's been noted. Councillor Maitland, this is the last.
Yes. John McFred. Stephen, in regards to that, point that I raised about the disconnection of services, would it be helpful though if the Western District Council policy aligned with Bay and Buller prior to the water CCO setting up?
It would be something like here on us that it's something that they will decide on. And what we decide on here is irrelevant once they take over. They will see the differentiations that are there and they will see more what that's going to look like going forward. It wouldn't matter if we change the policy now or brought that back to council next month. They will still put in place, they will address their policies and they will look at uniformity across the board. So they can't go into CCO with 3 different figures in there. So that is something that they will address.
Through the chief, I'm just say that's the way to provide you with any assurance or something that it's going into the differentiation is the treatment problem for the CCO to actually challenge what it is.
Yes.
Whereas if they're all consistent, there would be no need for them to do anything.
My concern mainly lay with the fact that I don't trust the CCO to not want to get as much money as they can
Well,
at a rate pass.
that's a pretty harsh comment to make for the position we are. It's probably not appropriate to here. Thank you. I appreciate the apology. So let's we can make that please.
Nilesh, I think that'll be an interesting one to see during the I think it was actually under the Rating Act, was something we could rate for. But under the new CCO set up where they're actually enforcing you for a service, don't know if they'll be able to enforce you for service you're not having don't see. So it'll be an interesting one to see where that. And I don't know how many people we're actually charging that half rate that I'm connected. I don't know how high that number is.
Through the chair, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's not a huge.
No.
So it's, yeah.
So yes, we are in challenging times as far as losing control of some things. We have to see where things end up with that. But to raise that concern anyway. And as we've gone through today, you know, some of those policies that we're looking at will have to be revisited and tidied up to be a bit more firm in what they're covering or discharging. So thank you for that. Is everybody ready to move forward to the resolution on the annual plan adoption? Yes, okay. So it's quite complex and long. So one is that the report be received. 2 is that council adopts the rating policy for 2026-2027 as attached to Appendix 1. Point 3 is that council adopts the rates and remission policy for 2026-2027 as attached as Appendix 2. That council adopts the final annual plan for 2026-2027, noting the following amendments. 1 is the council resolutions made during deliberations of the annual plan public hearing. 2 is the inclusion of the Glacier Township development rate as attached as Appendix 3. Point 3 is changes to financial statements on pages 17 to 20. And last, changes to fees and charges on page 42 and 50. And the final point in the resolution is that council directs the chief executive to make these documents available to the public following the amendments. Now we can go through singly, for approval, or we can do it as a mess. Is anybody happy to do that as one resolution? Yep. Right, so with that, I'm going to remove the second place so that we can resolve that that we're adopting the annual plan and that overall the chief executive makes those documents available to the public following the amendments. So move on to second place. Councillor Mackenzie, thank you very much for that. I know yeah.
I saw that support.
You should have, thank you for that. I see that. Councillor Munns, thank you very much. Look, it's not an easy thing to move and second and support. It's always a grinding axe for everybody involved because you never even come out of these feeling comfortable about them. And it won't matter what we do in the future, you'll still end up there. All in favour? Carried. Thank you everybody for that. Right, moving on, we move on to the rates resolution, and again, Stephen, if you wish to speak to, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I also thank Council as well for adopting the annual plan? It's a lot of work for the team, not just my team, but across the council, and I appreciate it. So, like I said, it's a lot of documents setting the budgets.
I think just on that, Stephen, I'm just thinking too, and when he says a lot of work, it's an understatement. You can come in here any time of year, even on weekends, and then start reviewing the working we're coming to get these documents together. Reviewing and everything else that goes in between. I came in here on Sunday and this gentleman was here doing some more work. I've come in here in the evening and the staff have been here. They pour a huge amount of time into this, let alone doing the day job at most of the positions as well. So great gratitude to this. Thank you.
Your Worship. Okay, rates resolution. Hopefully this is now administrative. Now that the annual plan has been adopted, we can now, as council, set the rate strike. The rate strike is laid out in the documents presented. It takes into account all of the changes that have just been adopted in the annual plan. Does anyone's got any questions?
Questions? Nothing? I take the quietness as nothing to be raised. If that's the case, we'll go straight forward to the resolution. One is that the report be received. Two, that council adopts all the rates described and quantified in the rates resolution of 2026-27. And three, that council instructs the chief executive to strike the rates for the year ending 30th of June 2027 in accordance with the annual plan 2026-2027. May I move for a second, please? Councillor Pear, thank you very much. Councillor Maitland, thank you very much for that. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everybody. It's appreciated. Excellent. Right, and everybody there, because next is our projects and hearing pause. And the floor is yours again.
Your Worship, so take the report as read, just to make it clear that we're basically, council is requesting that all sort of projects that are unspent within the current financial year carried forward. There are some significant projects in there which we've spoken to. I know my colleague, Earl, has spoken on some of the projects. The main one being carried forward at the airport, which is 100% grant funded anyway. We've also got wastewater, which is one of the larger projects that obviously, as we know, is various reasons is ongoing. There's a couple of other projects related to the Total Bridge, which is now underway and will be completed by Christmas. It just took longer than we expected to get it going. And one of the other main carry forwards relates to general bridge policies. That's really around the fact that many of the bridges have been assessed and aren't actually required to be updated at the moment. So that's been rolled forward. It's something that will be reviewed. I mean, the whole thing will be reviewed as part of LTP anyway, but particularly roading will be reviewed when we come to LTP. I'd also like to state as well that these are draft, because at the moment, appreciate year end hasn't happened yet. We don't know obviously what the final invoices will be. I'll come back to council again in August, either with just an update to say there was no significant changes, or if there were any significant changes, then I'll come back to council and request just an amendment to carry forward to say, actually, this number needs to change to from X to Y. Any questions?
Questions with motion? No. Is ready to move forward to the resolution on that? I take the silence as being sorry. Not one of the area. Right, so the resolution is that the report be received. And 2, that council approves the carry forward of funds for the projects itemised in appendix 1 of the financial year 2026-2027. And 3, that council approve the future allocation of funds for specific purposes. And I'm moving to seconder, please. Councillor Gillette, Councillor Burden, thank you very much. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Stephen, very much for your lengthy report.
Thank you. I'll be back for one more item. before
Yeah.
the day's over.
Right, so next we move on to the Regional Maritime Safety Program, something new for everybody at the table. And we welcome Lee as General Manager of Regulatory and Compliance to speak to the report, please, Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll take the report as read, but just simply to add to that the report seeks your approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Regional Council and with Grey and Buller District Councils. Now, the initial focus of those conversations to establish that MOU was specifically in relation to coastal shipping and focused on the ports at Greymouth and Westport. But as part of that memorandum of understanding as well is the appointment of a regional harbour master, which there hasn't been, and there was a press release to say that they are looking to appoint that harbour master. And it also establishes a collaborative framework with regards to coastal shipping, but also in relation to recreational and commercial safety and maritime safety, which is general from that. The MOU establishes a working group and look at that maritime safety and a programme in relation to that harbour master, of which that may for us and specifically down that may identify some future commercial opportunities. And that working group and the harbour master is funded through the project that the councils were able to get, and it's about $1 million in relation to the maritime safety. There is no cost to joining the conversation with the other councils for us at this stage. Now, the regional harbour master position is funded up until December 2028, after which point there would need to be a conversation. Now, that conversation, to lead into the previous conversations that you've had today, is part of the LTP, and we would have that conversation with you because that would be basically year 2 of the new LTP conversation. From that point of view, there is no cost to being at the table, to have those conversations and to be part of those conversations on a regional basis from that perspective. And my report concludes that the recommendation is that we do enter into that agreement, that MOU, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lee, for that. Just as a follow up to that, we do have Jackson Bay, which is regarded as the FC port. And the other thing that I will note with this is that as we lead through to, and I'll bring it up again, I look over the form, that if we are to become one council, then this paper becomes very relevant to what the council will be managing with the ports, potential business, etc. So it's actually quite advisable to get in here at this stage and have that familiarity for the future, because how we bring the assets together, we don't know in the future, but our understanding of what system structure and what this is about would be advantageous to us at this stage. So thank you for that, Lee. Any questions for Lee, please? Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I've got 2 questions. One is it may be funded at the start, but whether or not the funding keeps going. Second thing is, I think the West Coast, the most important thing is that would be a really good offshore way to port what they have in Australia. I think it would secure lots of things that are at risk on the coast at the moment, like industry, nuclear factory, and earthquake resilience. So in that regard, I think it's possibly a good idea that it starts, but okay, to end up at just another thing that ratepayers have to pay for.
If I can, Councillor Maitland, just something that you've got to bear in mind too at the moment is that the Buller and Grey councils do manage their ports.
Yes.
So again, as I said, with the reform, that is something that will be within the council management going forward.
Right.
Effectively, this committee or working group is funded at the moment, that's finishing at the next election.
Right.
So we don't know what that's going to look like, but they manage their ports currently.
Right.
And that will be potentially how it will work going forward as well. So again, things won't change, but it's good that we actually understand what's involved with this at this stage, so we can actually have further discussions going forward.
Right.
Councillor McKenzie.
Through the chair, while it's good to plan for change, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if we're going to amalgamate. I've seen today online, but I don't know if you're aware of this, Buller District Council actually posted on Facebook that they've appointed the harbour master. And we've not even made our decision. So what's good, isn't that jumping the gun?
You mean, volunteer to the gun?
Possibly, but anyway, you've said that there's no cost to us up front, and that's in your report, that's all well and good, but do we have any best estimates of what Westland's cost would be if we're not non-committed?
Through the chair, just in relation to that press release, and so the press release was yesterday, from Buller, just acknowledging that they have seconded a harbour master for that role. There is no cost to us in participating in those conversations that say at the moment in my report. The funding that the regional council was able to get provided for that role for the next 2.5 years up until December 2028. At which point it will be a conversation for yourselves, depending on what happens or does not happen. Let's say there is no amalgamation or unitary authority from our perspective. It will be a conversation for yourself to determine whether or not you wanted to participate in funding that position moving forward or not. That's that side of things. I don't have specific figures in relation to that. All I can take is from my report, or there is a figure in there at the very last page. It may be that figure divided by 4. It may be looking at a bit more of a proportional representation of what those dollars are. That will be a conversation for the future.
Just a follow-up. Thank you, Lee. So in all this planning for this project, has it never come up? We've got Jackson Bay, which is a wharf. They've got 2 harbours, which obviously take more resources to run than what we've got. So has there been any discussion about proportionality?
Through the chair, there's been no conversation in relation to that currently. It's not to say that that isn't a conversation that must happen. It's part of that working group, basically. We were recently approached in relation to this, as my report reflects. And so, from my perspective and through with my chief executive, was to say, look, I think it's a positive thing for us to be participating in those conversations. There was no costs for us at the moment, but it's a conversation that we would need to have moving forward in December 2028.
Thank you, Jimmy. Any further questions for Lee? If that's the case, the resolution is that the report be received and that the council agrees to participate in the memorandum of understanding, and that council delegates the authority to the chief executive to enter a memorandum of understanding on behalf of Western District Council with the West Coast Regional Council, Buller District Council and Grey District Council to facilitate the purpose and objectives of the agreement in the Regional Maritime Safety Program. Can I have a mover and seconder for that resolution, please? Thank you, Councillor Martin. Do I have a second, please? Councillor Munns, thank you very much. All in favour? Harry, thank you very much, everybody, for that. We have just passed the 2-hour mark, but I'm picking that everybody will want to go through to the end of this and then break the 5 minutes to confidential section of meeting rather than break down. Is that the preference? Just a nod at the head would be fine around the table, right? We'll carry on with this part of the meeting. Not a problem, please. Anyway, right. Next on the agenda, we have the application for rates remission, and again back to Stephen, please, for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Also, thank you to Council for allowing the report to be read. And I take the report as read, but it might help if I give a little bit of background. So the reason this report has been tabled and the reason it's being tabled as an urgent matter is we request that Council make a decision before the rates are struck. So obviously it's Council Marriage that just strike the rates. We've only got a few weeks more to do this. Council's current rate remission policy, and again, this has always been in, we haven't changed it this time around, it's always been Council's policy, is that developers, where they have a subdivision, are entitled to rate relief for the first 2 years of the development. So that's only where the units are bare units, they're not built on. As soon as they're built on, as soon as they're sold, they become rateable under the new owners. So it's literally just sections that have been built. It obviously was put in place by the council to give some sort of protection to developers and encouragement to developers. So far, that policy lasts for 2 years, but there is a item within the, a criteria within the policy, which allows a developer to ask for an extension to that. That extension has to come to council, and council needs to then give an extension for 1 year to allow the developer to have rate remission. The remission isn't of all rates, so it's a remission of, they will still pay the general rates that is due on the property or on a title. And they also have to pay a full rate on one unit within the development. So if there's 10 plots, we pick one, council always picks the largest one, and we say, well, we'll rate you fully on that one, and then the other 9 plots, you'll only have to pay the general rates. You don't have to pay the uniform annual general charge, community charge, tourism, or any service rates. So that's the situation. We recently received a request from North West Estates, got a development up at Seaview, to have an extension to their policy. So they've already had 2 years worth of remissions. They've asked for an additional remission. Just to give some context on it, there are 22 units that have since been sold on this plot. There are 13 remaining that they're asking for a remission on. 13 that are remaining, if council was to approve it, would mean that we would be remitting them $40,000 worth of rates. So 56,000 was struck, 16 they would have to pay still because that's forms part of the general rate of the 1 unit that's fully rated. So the difference is 40,000. But also noting that the 22 units that now will be rated this year are generating $100,000 worth of additional rate revenue. Some of which would have been in the plan, but there are several new units, and so I don't have how many. I think 7 who are coming on new this year. So just to kind of give a reflection on, yes, we are looking for a remission, we will lose rate revenue, but we also have 7 new properties coming on from that development, which then will generate new rate revenue. Hopefully that's a little bit of context on why this has happened and why it's come urgently.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. And just to note, please, too, this is where we're going to stay and not resolve or, yep, thank you. Right, points of clarification, there's probably some questions or that lying around in his heads with this one.
We understand that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Stephen, does this just relate to subdivisions of what, 3 or more sections or 2 sections or?
Yeah, through the chair. So yeah, it's any development that has been subdivided and it's been hit by a developer, but it's not any clearer than that in the rating policy. My understanding is that it's only been used in 2 other occasions so far. And that this is actually the first time we've received a request for an extension.
To the chair, what's the definition of a development?
It's not in our, through the chair, it isn't in our policy, it just states a development.
So it could be.
Yes, effectively.
Councillor Mackenzie.
I think, through the chair, I think from what Stephen just said, it's the first request for an extension, that as councillor is setting precedents. If we grant the extension, is that my understanding on it?
Through the chair, I mean, it does say it's on a case by case basis, so I mean, it's, yes, we've never done it
for us
to
decline somebody else.
unless there, yes, and unless there's a specific reason why this one's accepted, and there's a specific reason or other than potentially things that we are setting precedent, we've done it.
2 years is quite a long time to be marketing properties.
I have the name of this house.
I'm not at a goal yet.
It's a really complex one, so it's difficult because we don't want to shut the door on development, and we all know that sometimes sales can slow down and these properties can sit. So I think the other thing too is that the policy could probably be revisited and tidied up a little bit with this, and we could potentially define what a developer is within that. Because I think I'd subdivide my property with a section off the side, does that make me a developer? You know, and then what happens when it sits and I come back with asking for an extension of time because it hasn't moved development's happened within 2 years. So I get that I was setting a precedence for this, and it's a really difficult one, but the definition of a development, I think, is probably what we need to look at.
Through the chair, I've got our rates officer watching. She just messaged me to say that it's a newly subdivided, has to be 3 lots or more.
Oh,
So-
perfect. Okay. Councillor Monero.
Well, I mean, when the wire staff numbers are going up and you're loading us up more stuff like this, you know, like. If it's just that the rules the way they are, instead of making exemptions, yeah, it's less work for the staff and. We don't have to have extra staff.
Through the chair, can I just clarify, and thank you very much, I do appreciate Councillor Mayor and the playground staff and the loading staff. But we'll see coming forward that actually our staff is there. Yes. That's that one of the commission.
It's a hard one because we actually have, quite a few developments around. Not just here, we have the further south. And we have more that are going to be coming online. I guess the other thing we need to make sure we capture is all those properties that are sitting there that they are coming forward at the appropriate time, or they fly under the radar as far as asking for or not being charged. I guess it's that same thing we've had with developments on road reserves and so forth. You know, I think we captured everybody within this. The fact that they've come for us for an extension, I think it's quite meaningful to them, because then we've got others that are sitting there that aren't potentially paying.
Yes, so through the chair, so that it's a request has to be submitted to council, so council's policy is to rate all units unless a remission is requested.
Yeah.
So there could be other developers who may want to do so and haven't, but we don't actively contact them. Obviously, through our processes, we capture obviously when the property is subdivided and then subsequently sold through QV, sending us the information as well. We obviously pick it up and it's rated as soon as it's appropriate. So it's not that we wouldn't remit a policy and then the new owner would then suddenly find they've got a remission. So that would be then, once the title has changed, we would pick it up.
Councillor Elliott.
For your worship, just my own clarity, when does the remission timer start? Is it when the property is subdivided or when titles are issued?
Through the chair, so it's when titles are issued, and then it's the next rating year afterwards. So because rates are only struck once a year, and we can only make changes to rating database.
Because I
Once
thought
a year.
the titles only just been issued for this development.
This is Seaview, so this is old,
Seaview.
yeah. Yeah, not the race course.
Yes, Councillor Henson.
Through the chair, it's really difficult because, depending how we go on this, when there's a rise in the market or a fall in the market, the developer can then use the fall in the market with the rates permission to keep not selling them till they get a better price, you know, and then that elongates us getting the revenue that we desperately need, because the rate, every dollar counts. It could Tesco. Yeah. I think 2 years is a long time. And so do they need to adjust their prices to attract buyers? Is that what they need to do?
Well, it's
So
not.
that's not for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have, but not for a bigger one.
So, sorry, agree, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Stephen, do you have any idea of how many subdivided properties on the market at the moment? Give us an idea of what the sort of competition will be and the likelihood of sales.
Through the chair, no, sorry, I'm not sure that we hold. Yeah, that's relevant.
To rebuttal Greg, there's one on the south of the river. Big new one going in, we've got Crestview. As Helen said, there's ones down in southwestern.
There's
So
potentially some out at,
Mara. So it's, you know, the more there are, the harder it is for us salespeople, you know, to draw people in and sell them, because of the high cost of building a home at the moment. And that cost is directly because of the geography, and we're further away from where the materials are stored and manufactured. So it's not, and also we're in a buyer's market, so there's more properties than there are buyers to buy them. So it's a tough one, and we want to be there, but also we act as custodians and advocates for the ratepayer at the end of the day. It's not,
Commercial risk.
yeah,
It
and,
is.
and we have to think,
Yeah.
think on behalf of the ratepayers in this decision.
Councillor Martin, sorry.
Yeah, only the extension for 12 months.
That's correct, through the chair,
Yes,
that's
so
correct.
in
Once
2 years.
they've had 2 years already, they're requesting an additional
12
year.
months.
They anticipate that all properties will sell this year, but I think that's in their report. Pencils. Yes.
It's hard, wasn't it? Because I mean, if you give them the permission and they can get the property sold, this gains there as opposed to putting them in a position where they go stagnant and the income is potentially reduced to council. Not an easy one. Is anybody at the point we don't need to make a decision on this? Eh? Oh.
Or key under one section,
Yeah.
and you're building.
So here's Councillor Martin, I think you will need your other question. No, it's fine. Well, it's a hard one, it's kind of, yeah. Yes, yes, yeah. So is everybody ready? Because what I mean, the resolution is that we receive the report and the council approves or rejects the application for North West Estate to extend the period of rates remission at the subdivision at Seaview for a 1 year period. And the council instructs staff to process the approval or rejection of the application. I'm just a little bit concerned that the space is here telling me that I'm not really confident yet to make a vote, or am I misreading? Well, yeah.
I have to go with the ratepayers.
Yeah.
We have to not give the extension.
Okay, so first off, I'll ask, okay, is council ready to approve the application for North West Estate? Can I have a show of hands, please?
Approved.
To approve the extension of time. I'm asking that first for a show of hands. Councillor Martin. Thank you, councillor. And noting the abstention from councillor Bevan. Right, secondly, now I will ask for show of hands for those that would like to reject the application for the extension to time. Can I have a show of hands on that, please? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, with that, then that's 5. I will now call for the resolution. Or a move for a second to do that. So the report be received, the council rejects the application from North West Estate to extend the period of rates remission if they're sufficient at Seaview for a 1 year period. And the council instructs staff to process the rejection of the application. All in favour of that motion, of that resolution, sorry. Right. Okay, against, would you like to have that recorded against? Yeah, councillor Martin against, please. And that is carried, so we ask councillor to instruct staff to process that rejection as to manage. But we will also note that there is a review of policy required for this going forward to tidy up and determine development what determines. Yeah. Yes, can I have a that's right. It's the same.
Sorry.
Yep.
There, you know, of course, council buildings.
Yes, it's recorded here and that is abstention for voting for that reason.
Yeah, because it's included the ages.
Yes, yes, you did at the front and that was something here. Thank you. So moving on to administrative resolutions, there are none. And then we will resolve that council move into the public closed section at 3 centre. Can I have a move for centre, please? Oh, sorry. We need to show of hands that we didn't give a move second. Sorry. Sorry.
Notice of motion.
Notice of motion, laid out at the commission.
Move for a second, sorry, for the rates from remission, yes, I come to that one. rates and remission, sorry, I do need to read this, just to show of hands for the execution of the application for rates and remission. Sorry, councillor Clear, thank you very much. Councillor Mann, you will second that. Thank you. Sorry, and then we have the by show of hands to one, thank you for that. Resolution to exclude member second, please resolve that council those. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, notice of motion, sorry, we do need to bring this in. Cavanera, can you just come back for 2 seconds, please? Sorry, I did have this on the notes to bring it into the public section, so the notice of motion. The council has received a notice of motion from councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mackenzie to present the notice to councillors. The notice of motion received complies with standing orders 27.1. So we have brought that into the public section with the meeting.
Sorry, through the chair, can I just ask that I was content that the notice of motion information response paper came through into the other component of the meeting. However, the draft tourism paper I'm intending as the LTP paper is a strategic paper for discussion. Can we please hold that in the confidential because it's not ready yet? I merely put it as part of a wider context info as additional information. I feel that we discuss that in the confidential. The response is fine in the public, but the actual draft tourism paper I'd like to be putting into the confidential as it wasn't really for distribution in the public sector. Sorry, just for clarity, otherwise.
Right, okay. So before we move into councillor reading the resolution, I do need a member seconder to, so we can actually that we are bringing members to the public section of the meeting. Because we noted at the meeting that it would be important to this, but we need a member seconder to acknowledge that as councillor Manera, councillor Wood, thank you very much. That's moving it into the public section. Thank you for that. Right, to councillor Mackenzie, if you could please take us through the notice of motion.
Okay. You want me to read what I written tomorrow?
That's yes, please.
So I sent an email to the CE with support from 4 other councillors to put forward this proposed motion that the council receive a confidential report on the financial and operational performance of the council operated eyesight service, including total annual operating costs, including staffing, overhead allocation, revenue and net ratepayer subsidy, visitor usage and service metrics, contractual obligations and liabilities, staffing implications of any service reduction, restructuring or cessation, alternative delivery models, including external operation or digital alternatives, and any risks, opportunities, or financial implications associated with future operation of the service. Further, that the report be considered in public excluded session when necessary under Schedule 7, due to the potential sensitivity of staffing, contractual and commercially sensitive information. The intent of this motion is to ensure council has sufficient financial and operational information available to make an informed decision regarding the future of the eyesight service and its ongoing cost to ratepayers. This notice of motion is supported by a majority of councillors copied into this email.
Yes. Yeah. So councillor Mackenzie has moved the motion. I do need a seconder for that. Councillor Cleet, thank you very much. So the resolution is that the notice of motion be received and accepted. Any answer on the table? All in favour? Thank you. Okay. Right, response to this stays in the confidential section as noted by the chief executive. So with that, thank you, councillor. We want to discuss that at that time. We've got restrained on the discussion that can happen with it now.
Through the chair, can I say that continued in terms that we provided the response that we felt was appropriate to the notice of motion in terms of the information required in terms of financial considerations as requested. However, as you've so noted, staff and applications being service reduction, restructuring, or cessation, with the delivering orders where any future operation of service we did not detail because there would obviously be sensitivity and also potential harm issues around that. So that's not contained within the response. However, the response provided to you does provide you with the rest of the information. And as I've requested, that the draft paper I attached subsequent to that, which was the tourism paper, is discussed in the confidential component because it's not ready for distribution to public distribution, but will be part of the LTP. I was seeking feedback from you folks.
So, sorry, through the chair, the reason I specifically requested to go into confidential is so that the council and the people supporting the motion can get all the information you requested, which hasn't been provided. And so your reasoning for not giving us information doesn't really stand, does it?
Well, it stands in the sense that I can't provide. It stands in the sense that I would be exposing you to risk should I share any of the other information and you have subsequently asked to come into the public.
I didn't ask.
I asked for it. In the argument sections, because going by the report, three wishes. On the report that's it's in the agenda, I don't see anything in there that would warrant being within committee. I think it would struggle to withstand the challenge.
And I, through the chair, I was content that the response would be discussed in an open because in my information there that would be hopefully achievable as we move through the long-term plan process where this information will be shared anyway. But I could not, the other conversation around someone's assessment, which I did not provide in the which would be discussed in confidential.
And this is a topic that comes forward to the LTP. We cannot make any decisions based on the information until we get to that time.
That's not true, Your Honour. And
I'm not really.
I did that last time.
Yeah. Through the chair, I think it would behoove the CE to have this whole discussion as I originally intended, because I wish to raise things which, which
It's entirely
trigger the E.
may potentially trigger the that's not my decision.
No, it was actually a decision of council to bring it into public, so we did go through that at the time. So Paul, and then we will get feedback from everybody based on this, because we need to put it in one place or another.
Well, I think it's quite simple in terms of move the report from the chief executive into the open meeting. But the discussion that on the final matters need to be more confidential, obviously.
Sorry, what is the relevance of moving the GCE's report into the public?
Because there's nothing that justifies it, your worship. There's nothing that justifies it being confidential. It does not meet the
Which
threshold.
Bar just said, so.
It does not meet the threshold of being confidential.
Through the chair, I suggest that I'm content that the report goes into a public arena. But I believe that to get a true picture and a full conversation, we have that in the confidential component, recognising that you bring these topics to the fore. But I think it's more appropriate to do it.
But the discussion therefore is in committee.
But the information is.
The paper will be public.
Okay,
There's nothing on the,
alright,
that's some of that dispute business, so I'm not.
okay, so
So I think can I just reflect that the form report did contain the opinions, which was the draft tourism paper, which I'm requesting to be retained in the confidential component, not put it in the Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
right, so
Received the CE's response excluding the draft minutes.
Attached to
Can
the agenda.
you get it, Sam?
The CS response report, excluding the appendix as a draft person paper, will then be tabled into the post component documentation of the meeting. And therefore it will be available.
And published on the website.
Yes, because of on site, yeah, as part of the documentation, you'll get.
Right. I'm just going to make sure we've got this recorded correctly. So off the back of the notice of motion and receiving and accepting that notice, the notice of motion response report. Council will receive the response report in the public section of the meeting. And that council retains the appendix to the report in the public excluded section of the meeting. With further discussion to be held in that public excluded section of the meeting. Is everybody happy with that?
Yep.
And I have a representative for that, please. Thank you, councillor Maitland. Councillor Gleed, all in favour? Thank you, right. So. Yeah, so we've got that. So lots now, and we'll go to the public section. Right? Yep, and that's tabled with all the other material associated with the motion. If everybody's happy with that, we will revert back to public excluded section. Can I represent the please to resolve the council meeting as the public excluded section of the meeting at 3:32 p.m. Thank you, councillor Gillett. Councillor Martin, thank you very much. Thank you members of the public for viewing the live stream and all those in attendance at the meeting today. So thank you everybody, and moving the break.